Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So for today, I'm going to be reading chapter 9. And, yeah, I'm going to be posting every Monday and Wednesday, because that seems to be working out pretty good for me. But let's get started. Chapter 9. The following hours were boring, uneventful, and honestly, a major headache for Izuku. Not only was Uraraka pulling him by his wrist through the whole mall, but she was also yelling excited, mishmash the whole time. Every time they entered a store, they would only be there for a few moments before Uraraka would squabble about it not being the right store, then continuing to roam around. With Izuku's free hand, he rubbed his head, a long groan coming from his lips. The poor boy had just come out of a mental and physical trauma, and was absolutely not in the mood for Uraraka's personality. But Izuku's fear of confrontation held him back from saying anything. He felt Uraraka's grip tighten on his small wrist, and he yelped in pain as she nearly crushed his bones. Sorry, Deku. I'm just a bit annoyed. I can't find anything nice or useful at this party. The iron grip loosened, and he let out a sigh of relief. Oh, why are we going shopping if Momo was the one taking care of the party? Izuku whispered lightly. It barely got to Uraraka, and almost drowned out by the crowd around them. Uraraka stopped abruptly, and Izuku found himself a centimeter away from ramming into her. She turned her body to face Izuku. He stepped back a couple times, thankful that Uraraka had let go of his hand, and nearly glanced at his friend. If he was being completely honest with himself, he was a bit fearful of making eye contact with the people around him, since one of the last times he made eye contact with someone, he had gotten a right hook to his jaw. Uraraka's arms slammed sluggishly to her side, a look of disappointment and dislike plastered on her face. I forgot about that, she whispered, crossing her arms. Why didn't you tell me earlier? We just wasted time doing nothing, she whined, tapping her foot on the tiles below her. Sorry, I guess you looked too happy to be disturbed, he lied, interlocking his fingers in front of himself. Uraraka stared at her friend for a few more moments before taking a scan around the mall. It took her a few moments to spot what she had intended to find, and when she did, she let out a chuckle of delight. The disappointment washed away as quickly as it had appeared. Deku, how about we get some ice cream? She finally asked with a wholehearted smile. As she asked, she also already headed to the small convenient place ice cream shop. Izuku shook his head. A ghost of smile lingered on his lips. He felt lucky to have such an energetic friend. Time skipped to Saturday around 5:30. Uraraka, Bakugo, and Izuku all sat in Bakugo's car. Since it was Bakugo's, he sat in the driver's seat. He had an angry scorn on his face. He didn't want to drive to Izuku's and Uraraka's, but Uraraka had practically forced him to saying something along the lines of, I will tell every single person in our school that you held Deku in your arms if you don't. Of course, however, Izuku had no knowledge of that conversation, since Uraraka had conveniently chose to call the explosive blonde when Izuku had left to pack a small bag of belongings for the days he would be away from home. Since Bakugo was not about to get exposed by a situation he still wasn't even comfortable thinking about, he agreed. So now they're stuck in the tension-filled car ride to Momo's house. Uraraka had taken the passenger seat beside Bakugo, since she was worried Izuku would get murdered if he sat in the front, and Izuku took the seat right behind Bakugo. Uraraka had begun to play some of the gayest songs she had on her Spotify account. Much to Bakugo's displeasure, Izuku sat uncomfortably, his legs twisted together at the ankle, and to both Uraraka and Bakugo's surprise, he was humming along with the songs, and that had began to play on Uraraka's phone. I Wish Kinda Wish You Were Gay by Billie Eilish was what Izuku had been humming to. He wasn't even aware of that fact. He was in his own world, daydreaming while staring intensely out of the car window, finding comfortable as the wheezing blare of green past the window. As the song finished, Uraka clapped dramatically at her friend's performance. Izuku's face flushed a deep red as he noticed what he had just done. Sorry. He panicked and sulked deeper in the leather seat, tears of embarrassment rimming his beautiful green eyes. Uraka huffed, confused. What do you mean sorry? I didn't know you listened to music. She clapped once again, happy that her and her friend had another thing in common. I don't listen to many songs, he whispered, still embarrassed. Ooh, what do you listen to then? Give me your phone. And with that, she leaned back in the seat, grabbing Izuku's bag, and had been seated right behind him in perfect view for Uraka to easily grab. What, Uraka? He desperately tried grabbing the bag back, mortified of what Uraka was about to find. Come on, it can't be that bad. I mean, you've listened to my playlist, and they're like the gayest songs ever. What could get worse than that? Uraka laughed, pulling Izuku's phone out of its pocket. Then she sighed in displeasure. Deku, what's your password? She looked back at Izuku with big round puppy eyes, practically begging him for an answer. He huffed and crossed his arms, indicating that he wasn't going to answer. Try 3141592, a sudden deep voice spoke up from the driver's seat. Or 715420, he added, almost a slight thought. Actually, scratch that. 451121. The last one made Izuku jump in surprise. Kachan! He heard a huff in reply from the front seat. How did you guess that? Izuku yelled in confusion. Uraka at this point was flabbergasted, completely unsure of the two things. How the blazing hell did Bakugo even come up with those numbers? And two, was he correct? From Izuku's reaction to the last one, she assumed that Bakugo had guessed correctly. She heard Bakugo let out a short bark of laughter, followed by a grumble of incoherent words. She quickly punched in 451121 into Izuku's phone, and with a shrill hell of delight, the phone opened to show photos of Izuku as a child, whom was sitting next to what looked to be the child version of the explosion blonde beside her. OMG, you guys were so freaking cute as children! Uraka squealed, looking at the adorable photo. From the corner of her eyes, she watched Bakugo slightly turn his head and glanced at Izuku's wallpaper. His ears turned pink and he snapped his head back to the road after a few seconds. Bakugo, tiny Bakugo, had a large red ball in his tiny grasp. A huge smile covered his face, with red eyes widened with what seemed to be happiness. Tiny Izuku was right behind him, an even wider smile planted on his features, his huge wide green globes showing amazement and also a large amount of happiness. Uraka squealed again and heard Izuku sigh in defeat from the back seat. She glanced behind at him and giggled at the flustered greenette that lingered in the back seat, curled into a ball, trying to conceal his growing blush. She moved her eyes to the phone once again and swiped the lock screen away, only to be greeted with what she believed to be an even cuter picture of the two boys. Both Izuku and Bakugo sat on a carpet floor, sharing a set of earbuds. Izuku had the left and Bakugo had the right. They seemed to be listening to something and little Bakugo had a red tint to his cheeks. She kicked in delight at the charming picture of the two boys. She watched once again as Bakugo glanced at Izuku's phone. This time, however, when his eyes met the phone, his face went little red and his head snapped back even quicker than before. She giggled and stared lovingly at the sweet photo once again. They just looked so adorable in this photo. She couldn't get enough of it. Hey, pink cheeks. I think if you don't just go to the playlist right now, Deku's gonna go into a panic attack, and I'm absolutely not dealing with that today, Bakugo stated, not even glancing behind himself. Uraraka peered behind her at Izuku, and sure enough, the boy was shaking a bit, and his breaths were getting a bit ragged. His face was redder than before, and if Uraraka was being honest, it looked painful. How did you didn't even look behind you? Uraraka snapped her head at Bakugo, glancing confused daggers at the large teen. He let out a quiet chuckle and looked sidelong at Uraraka, then at Izuku. I've heard that noise, he nodded towards Izuku's spot, so many times I can immediately tell. And with that, his head went back to the road. Uraraka let a devilish smirk across her face as she thought of Bakugo helping Izuku through a panic attack. This was all just too adorable for Uraraka to comprehend. Without another word, Uraraka clicked on Izuku's Spotify account. There, Izuku. I'm sorry for looking at your lock screen and wallpaper. They're really cute pictures, by the way, she said with a smile and glancing back at Izuku. He had slipped out of his tight ball, and now his flustered face was snapped at in Uraraka's direction. It's fine, he whispered, letting his head hang down a little. She sighed and clicked on one of Izuku's playlists. Immediately, Youngth by Daughter began playing. OMG, yes! Uraraka screamed, clapping happily as the song kept playing. Izuku huffed, upset that his personal playlist was being played without his consent. A lot of people wouldn't think this was a big deal, but Izuku found it uncomfortable that she was playing it. He loved these songs, yes, but he found some of them a bit embarrassing. At least he found it embarrassing that he listened to them. Once that song finished, Izuku's favorite song began playing. Just because it was Izuku's favorite song doesn't mean it wasn't going to make him any less embarrassed. It also didn't help that his song may or may not be the song that Izuku had told Bakugo when they were in middle school, that it reminded him of a song someone had wrote about Bakugo. That didn't help at all. Actually, it made it worse. Want to know why? Because it was a love song, and Izuku had listened to it countless times. What made it even worse was the reason he liked the song so much. He liked it because it reminded him of Bakugo. Izuku choked on air and tried to grab the phone from Uraraka's grasp. Okay, I think that's enough, Izuku yelled, taking one last try to grab the phone. Uraraka held it close to her chest, though, making it much too awkward for Izuku to grab it. No, the song is great. You know what? No, the song's great. You know what? Don't say it, please, Izuku mentally screamed. It kind of sounds like a song someone would write about Bakugo. Izuku watches as Bakugo tenses, his ears turning a dark shade of red. What the fuck, pink cheeks? No, it doesn't, he yelled, trying not to think too much of it. Why? He yelled, trying not to think much of it, why Izuku had it on his playlist. Funny joke, Bakugo, come on. It almost sounds like your soulmate wrote it for you. I mean, come on, you're an asshole, she yelled in delight, kicking her feet in the air. Come on, Izuku, back me up on this. Doesn't it sound like a song was written for Bakugo? Izuku gulped, unsure if he should answer truthfully. After a few seconds, Izuku gave a small nod. Uraka giggled, kicking her legs up in the air again. Bakugo huffed, embarrassed. Oh, Bakugo. Oh, Bakugo was never embarrassed. Something about that fact that the green nerd had listened to the song that even he agreed sounded like it was about Bakugo made Bakugo have some stupid ass fluttery feeling in his chest. It almost hurt, but not in the painful way. It was almost sickening, but it was the best way possible. Bakugo almost liked the feeling. Then one of the weirdest thoughts came to Bakugo's mind. It was the idea of Bakugo singing this to him. Bakugo turned a dark red, which got a bark of laughter from the brunette that sat to his right. "You guys are too adorable," she screamed. Bakugo and Izuku both flushed a even deeper shade of red, if that was even possible. Izuku glanced over at Bakugo, terrified that he would be angry. But to his surprise, he was met with a bright pink face. Holy shit, was Bakugo blushing? Because of that? Izuku covered his face in embarrassment and sulked back into his own seat, curling back into his defensive ball. He sighed as another song began to play. Deku grumbled angrily that for once his playlist was playing songs he actually liked. Didn't help that they were love songs, extremely fluffy love songs. Even Izuku was mentally broken almost 3/4 of his life. He still had those days where his old self showed through more. Today seemed to be one of those days. He was glad it was on his birthday. He found himself hoping he would have a good day tomorrow as well. He wanted to be himself for Bakugo's birthday. He didn't know why. It was just a weird feeling when he thought about how both himself and Bakugo were both going to obtain clues of whom their soulmates were. It was a mix of dread and excitement with a bit of hope thrown into the mix. He had no idea why he felt these emotions, but he found himself having a fuzzy feeling in his chest when he got them. He shook his head in hopes of shaking off the feeling. Without noticing it, he once again began humming the song that was playing. However, this time it wasn't I kinda just wish you were gay. It was, "Hello, how are you, my darling? Today I'm falling into a pile on the floor. Puppy love is hard to ignore. When everything you do, I do adore." He hummed in perfect harmony with the song. Uraka giggled, clapping once again. Izuku stopped quickly. The blush on his face returned. "So, Seven Nerd, we're here," Bakugo stated, smirking. He liked Izuku singing. Okay, guys, that was all for this chapter, and I will see you soon. Bye!